It was a night colder than most. The kind of night where even the street dogs curled into corners, trying to hide from the biting wind. Inside a tiny house at the edge of town, a young woman sat alone, staring at the small fire in her stove. She was tired from a long day of work, her stomach only half full from the little meal she could afford. Life had not been kind to her, but she had learned to live with it, telling herself tomorrow might bring something better. She was just about to close her eyes when she heard it, 3 soft knocks at the door. Her heart jumped. It was late, and she never had visitors. For a moment she thought of ignoring it, pretending she wasn't home. But the knocks came again, louder this time, yet still careful, almost desperate. With a sigh she stood up, pulling her thin sweater tighter around her shoulders. When she opened the door, the sight froze her. Standing there was a man who looked worn down, his coat torn at the sleeve, his shoes covered in dust. Beside him stood a little girl, no older than 8, her cheeks red from the cold, her small hands trembling as she clutched at her father's arm. The man's eyes carried shame as he spoke. "Please, we need a place for the night. Just one night. Anywhere. Inside to keep her warm." The young woman hesitated. Her house was barely big enough for herself. The food she had left was hardly enough for one more meal. Letting in strangers at night was never safe, and she knew it. But then her eyes fell on the little girl. The child's lips were trembling. Her eyes tired but innocent, silently begging for warmth. In that moment, all hesitation melted away. "Come inside," she said softly. The man quickly lowered his head in gratitude, whispering thank you as he guided his daughter inside. The little girl's eyes widened at the warmth of the small stove, and she sat close to it, holding her hands near the faint glow. The woman quickly fetched the last pieces of bread she had, placing them on the table. She added a small bowl of thin soup, the only thing she could stretch for 3 people. As they sat down, the girl's eyes lit up at the simple food, eating slowly as if each bite was a treasure. The man, however, touched only a little, making sure most of it went to his daughter. Watching them, the woman felt something stir in her chest. She didn't know them, yet their bond reminded her of something she had lost long ago: family. Love, safety. The silence stretched for a while, broken only by the crackling of the fire. Finally she asked, "Where are you from?" The man looked down, his hands tightening on the spoon. "From far away," he answered. "Life has not been kind. We lost our home. We lost everything." Before he could say more, the little girl spoke up, her voice soft but clear. "We used to live in a very big house with shiny windows." She smiled faintly, but her father gently placed a hand on her shoulder, shaking his head. She went quiet. The woman's curiosity grew, but she didn't press further. She could see there was more to their story, something hidden beneath his silence. Still, she didn't ask. Tonight wasn't the night for questions. Tonight was about keeping the child warm and safe. Later, when the girl grew sleepy, the woman laid out a small blanket on the floor near the stove. It was all she had, but the child curled into it happily, whispering thank you before drifting into sleep. The man stayed awake a little longer, sitting silently, his eyes filled with thoughts he kept to himself. The woman, watching him, couldn't help but wonder. His posture, his way of speaking, the gentle way he cared for his daughter, it didn't match the image of a man who had nothing. There was something different about him, something she couldn't quite place, yet she pushed the thought aside. At that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was that a little girl was no longer shivering outside in the cold. What mattered was that for one night, she had done what she wished someone would do for her if she were in their place. As she lay back in her bed, she stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying the knock on the door, the desperate plea, the look in the girl's eyes. She didn't know why, but she felt that letting them in was more than just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of something larger, something she couldn't yet understand. and as the night deepened and the wind howled outside, she drifted to sleep with a strange sense of peace. She had given away the little she had, but for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel poor. She felt rich in heart, in spirit, in the quiet knowledge that kindness still had power in a world that often forgot it. She had no idea that the man sleeping a few feet away carried a secret that could change her life forever. A secret hidden behind weary eyes and torn clothes. A truth she would only discover much later, that sometimes the people who seem to have the least are the ones with more than anyone could imagine. The next morning, the smell of smoke from the stove filled the little room. The young woman had risen early, trying to make breakfast with the few things she had left. A small pot of porridge simmered slowly, thin and watery, but it was warm and filling. She stirred it with care, her eyes drifting toward the man and his daughter. The little girl was still asleep, curled under the blanket on the floor, her small chest rising and falling peacefully. The man, however, was already awake. He sat quietly in the corner, his back straight, his eyes thoughtful. When he noticed the woman watching him, he gave a small nod, almost embarrassed. "You didn't have to do this," he said softly. "You've given us enough already." The woman shrugged, trying to hide her own hunger. "It's only porridge," she answered. "Nothing special." Soon the girl woke up, her sleepy eyes brightening when she saw the bowl placed in front of her. She whispered thank you before eating slowly, careful not to spill even a drop. The man only took half a portion, pushing the rest toward his daughter. The woman noticed this and frowned. "You should eat too," she said firmly. He smiled faintly. "I will, but she comes first." Something in the way he said it made the woman's chest tighten. His voice carried no bitterness, only love. It was clear that everything he had left in life was sitting in that one small bowl, smiling back at him with porridge on her lips. As they ate, the woman decided to ask gently, "So, where will you go after this?" The man hesitated, his spoon pausing mid-air. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "We're just moving forward, one day at a time." The little girl, too innocent to understand her father's guarded tone, piped up with a cheerful voice. "We used to have a big house, with lots of rooms. I had a bed with soft blankets, and my daddy always brought me toys." Her words spilled out quickly, her eyes shining with memory. The man's face tightened. He reached out, brushing her hair gently, and whispered, "That's enough, sweetheart." She looked confused but obeyed, lowering her head. The woman noticed everything. The pride in the girl's voice, the sadness in the father's eyes, the way he silenced her so quickly. She knew there was more to this story, but again, she didn't press. Sometimes people carry wounds too heavy to speak of right away. To change the subject, she asked the girl, "Do you like drawing?" She fetched a small piece of paper and a pencil stub from her drawer. The girl's face lit up, and soon she was sketching crooked little houses and stick figures. One drawing showed a tall building with shining windows. She pointed at it proudly. "That was our home," she said. The woman glanced at the man, who quickly looked away, his jaw tight. The rest of the morning passed in quiet moments. The woman washed her small set of dishes, while the girl hummed softly as she drew. The man offered to help, rolling up his sleeves, but she shook her head. "You're my guests, just rest." There was a strange grace about him, though his posture, his speech, the way he carried himself. He didn't fit the image of a man who was truly broken. Even in his worn clothes and tired eyes, there was something more. Something that didn't add up. At noon, the girl asked shyly, "Do you have bread?" The woman's heart sank. She had none left. Only a few potatoes hidden in a sack. She was about to apologize when the man interrupted quickly. "She's fine. She's eaten enough." His tone was gentle but firm, as if he didn't want to trouble their host further. But the girl's eyes lingered on the empty table. The woman couldn't bear it. She pulled out the potatoes and began to peel them, determined to make something, no matter how small. The man watched her with a quiet intensity. "You don't owe us anything," he said again. Her looked at him, her voice steady. "It's not about owing, it's about helping." The room grew quiet after that. The man's gaze lowered, but in his eyes was something unreadable respect, maybe even gratitude deeper than words. That night, after they shared the simple meal of boiled potatoes, the girl fell asleep early, her little hand still holding the paper with her drawings. The woman placed an extra cloth over her, tucking her in gently as if she were her own. The man sat across the room, watching silently. After a long pause, he finally spoke in a low voice. "Not many people would do what you've done. Most would have shut the door on us." The woman looked at him with tired eyes. "Maybe, but I know what it's like to be left outside with nowhere to go. No one should feel that, especially not a child." For the first time, the man's face softened. Completely. His eyes glistened, but he quickly turned away, staring at the small fire instead. As the night grew deeper, the woman couldn't shake the feeling that something was hidden in this man's silence. Something bigger than she could imagine, and she was right. The night passed slowly, the cold wind outside pressing against the little house. By morning, the fire had nearly gone out, leaving the room cool and quiet. The young woman woke to find the little girl still curled up under the thin blanket, her face soft and peaceful in sleep. The father was awake again, sitting silently as though he hadn't rested much at all. His eyes looked distant, as if carrying the weight of memories he couldn't put down. The woman fixed a small breakfast, just a piece of bread left from her neighbor's kindness the day before, and split it into 3 parts. The girl smiled brightly as she ate, crumbs clinging to her lips, while the man barely touched his portion. She noticed again how he always made sure his daughter had the most, even if he went without. It stirred something inside her. Throughout the day, the man offered to help with chores. He fetched water from the well, stacked wood near the stove, and even repaired a loose board on the door with careful hands. She watched him work. For someone who claimed to have nothing, his skills, his manners, even his way of speaking seemed unusual. He was calm, steady, and spoke with a quiet confidence. It was not the behavior of someone broken by hardship. At one point, while the woman washed a few dishes, the girl sat at the table drawing again with the pencil stub. She sketched a tall figure holding a little hand. "That's my daddy," she explained proudly. "He always tells me stories before bed. Even when we didn't have a bed anymore, he still told me stories." She grinned and leaned closer to the woman. "He said one day everything will be better. He always says that." The woman's heart softened. She glanced at the man, who quickly lowered his gaze, embarrassed by his daughter's words. But she could see the truth, no matter how hard life had become. He carried hope for her sake. That evening, when the girl had eaten and was drifting into sleep, the woman sat across from the man near the small stove. The firelight flickered between them, throwing shadows on the walls. It was the first time the silence between them felt almost like a conversation itself. "You take good care of her," the woman said quietly. The man looked at her with tired eyes. "She's all I have left. Everything I do is for her." The woman nodded slowly. "She's lucky to have you." For a moment, something passed across his face, pride mixed with pain. He looked like a man who had lost much but refused to let go of what truly mattered. The woman hesitated before speaking again. "I don't mean to pry, but you don't seem like other men who have lost everything. You carry yourself differently." The man gave a faint smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Appearances can be deceiving," he said simply. Then he added, almost in a whisper, "Sometimes you have to hide who you are, just to see the truth in others." His words puzzled her, but she didn't ask more. Something told her his story was too heavy to be told in one night. Later, as the little girl stirred in her sleep, she called softly for her father. He went to her side at once, kneeling and smoothing her hair. His voice was gentle as he whispered, "A story about stars and brave travelers." The woman listened quietly from her bed, the sound of his voice filling the small house. It was calm, warm, and full of love. As the story ended and the girl drifted back to dreams, the woman lay awake, her mind spinning. She thought of her own father, long gone, and how his voice used to comfort her in dark times. She realized then why she felt such a pull toward these strangers. It wasn't just pity. It was the recognition of something rare, something she had almost forgotten: selfless love. The hours stretched on. The man finally rested beside his daughter, his arm protectively over her small frame. The woman lay back in her bed, her thoughts restless. She felt she had opened her door to more than just travelers. Something about them was different, as if fate itself had placed them here. Before sleep finally took her, one thought stayed with her: people don't just knock on your door by accident. Some arrivals carry purpose, even if hidden. And somehow she knew this man's purpose in her. Life had only just begun. The morning sun broke through the small window, spilling light across the little room. The young woman stirred awake, stretching her tired arms, expecting to hear the quiet sound of the little girl humming or the soft movement of her father, but the house was strangely silent. Too silent. She sat up quickly. The blanket on the floor was folded neatly. The space where the father and daughter had slept was empty. Her heart raced. She hurried to the door and pulled it open. The cold air rushed in, and she looked down the dirt path. No sign of them, no footprints in the soft morning frost. It was as if they had vanished before dawn. Confusion settled heavy in her chest. She stepped back inside, scanning the room, wondering if she had dreamt the whole thing. But then her eyes landed on the table. There, placed carefully on the worn wood, was an envelope and a small velvet box. Her hands shook as she reached for them. The envelope carried no name, no address, just a single piece of folded paper inside. She unfolded it, her eyes catching on the carefully written words, "Thank you for your kindness. You opened your door when the world closed theirs. You shared your food when you barely had enough for yourself. Sometimes the richest people are those who give when they have the least. Do not think we have forgotten you. This is only the beginning." Her heart pounded as she read the words again and again, her eyes stinging with unexpected tears. She had given them only warmth, bread, and a corner to rest. To her, it was nothing. But to them, it had meant everything. With trembling fingers, she opened the velvet box. Inside lay a key, not an ordinary key. It was shiny, polished, and heavier than any house key she had ever seen. Next to it was a tiny folded note. She opened it quickly, and her breath caught. "Use this when you are ready. It will lead you to something better." The woman sat down heavily on the chair, staring at the key. Her mind swirled with questions. Where had they gone? Why leave a key behind? What could it possibly open? The rest of the day felt endless. She tried to focus on her chores, but her mind kept drifting back to the empty blanket, the letter, the box. The little girl's laughter still echoed in her ears, and she found herself missing it more than she thought possible. By evening, she could no longer shake the unease. She stepped outside, looking once more down the dirt road, half hoping they would return, but the road was still empty. She felt a hollow ache in her chest, as if she had lost something important, though she had only known them for a short time. That night, she sat near the stove, the letter in her lap, the velvet box in her hands. She traced the edge of the key with her thumb, wondering what kind of secret a stranger would leave in her care. She tried to convince herself it meant nothing, that maybe it was just his way of saying thank you. Yet deep down, she knew it meant more. Sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, her dreams were filled with the little girl's voice, laughing and calling her kind. She dreamed of tall buildings with shining windows, just as the child had described. She dreamed of doors that opened to halls far grander than anything she had seen. And always she dreamed of the father's quiet eyes that held secrets too heavy to share. The following morning, she woke with the key still in her hand. She turned it over again and again, trying to make sense of it. Why her? Why leave such a thing with someone who had so little? As days passed, the key became both a comfort and a weight. She carried it in her pocket everywhere she went, unable to part with it, yet not knowing what to do. The letter's words echoed in her mind. This is only the beginning. Little did she know that promise was true. Her act of kindness had already set into motion a change she could not yet imagine. The man and his daughter had not vanished. From her life, they had only stepped into another chapter, one she was destined to follow. She didn't yet understand that the key she held was more than metal. It was a doorway. A doorway to the truth about the man she had sheltered. And the secret he carried, hidden behind worn clothes and quiet words. And soon, that truth would find its way back to her. The days that followed felt unusually heavy for the young woman. Every morning she reached into her pocket, fingers brushing against the smooth metal of the strange key. It became a habit she couldn't stop. Sometimes she would hold it up to the light, staring at its shine, wondering if it truly meant something or if it was only a strange way for the man to say thank you. Life carried on, but she found herself distracted. At work, she thought about the father's quiet voice. At night, she remembered the little girl's soft laughter. They had only stayed for one night, yet the house now felt emptier than ever without them. One evening, as she walked home, she noticed a black car parked at the end of her street. It looked out of place among the old houses and broken fences. She thought nothing of it at first, until a man in a dark coat stepped out and called her name. Her heart skipped. How did he know her? The man approached politely and handed her an envelope. "You're invited," he said simply, and then returned to the car, leaving her standing alone. Inside the envelope was a note, neatly written, and an address in the city. Her hands shook as she read it. It wasn't just any address, it was a district known for tall buildings, rich families, and lives far different from her own. At the bottom of the note, written in the same hand as the first letter, were 5 words: "Bring the key with you." Her breath caught. The next day, with a nervous heart, she boarded a bus and clutched the key tightly in her palm. The city grew larger around her as she approached tall glass towers and shining streets she had only ever seen from far away. She followed the directions until she stood before an enormous mansion, the gates tall and heavy, guarded by iron. Courage nearly failed her, but she remembered the little girl's smile, and she stepped forward. The guard at the gate took one look at the key in her hand and immediately opened the gate, bowing slightly as she walked through. Inside, her eyes widened. The garden was filled with flowers, fountains, and paths lined with marble stones. The house itself rose high, its windows glittering in the sun. It was a world she had never touched before. As she approached the door, it opened slowly. And there, standing tall and proud, was the very man she had sheltered in her small home. But now he looked nothing like the worn figure she remembered. His torn coat was gone, replaced with a suit that fit perfectly. His shoes shined, his hair neatly kept, and behind him stood staff who bowed respectfully. The young woman's mouth went dry. Her heart pounded. I don't understand," she whispered. The man smiled softly, the same gentle smile she had seen that night, though now surrounded by wealth and power. "You gave us shelter when we had none. You shared your food when you had little. But what? You didn't know." He paused, glancing back at his daughter, who came running into the hall with laughter. "Was that I never truly lost everything. I only lost trust in people." Her eyes filled with shock as she looked around the mansion. Then back at him. "I am not a poor man," he continued. "I am a man who wanted to see if kindness still existed in a world where many care only for wealth. I disguised myself because I needed to know who would open their door to nothing but need, with no promise of return. The woman shook her head in disbelief. But why me? Because fate led me to your door, he said simply. And you showed me what true wealth is: compassion. You had nothing, yet you gave. That is rarer than gold. The little girl ran to the woman, hugging her tightly. I told Daddy you were kind, she said with a bright smile. Tears welled in the woman's eyes. She had thought she was helping a poor father and child. But in truth, she had given something far greater: proof that goodness still lived in the world. The man held out his hand to her. Come, he said gently. This key you carry opens more than a door. It opens a new life. I don't offer charity. I offer friendship, trust, and the chance to walk beside us, not behind us. The woman looked at the key in her palm, then at the little girl's hopeful eyes, and finally at the man standing before her. She felt her chest tighten with emotions she couldn't name. That night, when she returned home, she sat quietly, her world forever changed. She realized something important. Kindness, even the smallest act, has power. It can reach places unseen, open doors unimagined, and uncover truths hidden deep. She had thought she was giving them a place to stay for one night. But in reality, she had opened the door to her own destiny. And now, her life would never be the same.